Talk Moms. This is our third installment of our holiday conversations, and I am super excited about I am personally super excited about our conversation tonight. Tonight, we are going to good morning, good afternoon, good evening. For those that are joining us, good evening. I see some of our panel members already joining in. All right, look at that. So I am personally excited about this conversation tonight. Everyone is here. Hi, everyone. Because, okay, Sierra. Okay, let's see. Invite to also invite. Oh no, why can't it let me invite you? Miss Addie. Hi, Sharon.
Hello. Can you hear me?
How are you?
Doing well. How are you?
I'm well. Listen, it won't allow me to invite Miss Addie. Why won't it let me invite Miss Addie? Miss Addie, can you go out and come back in? For some reason, it's not allowing me to invite. Hi, Miss Shannon.
Hi. How
are you?
Wonderful.
I'm going to turn this light off. Oh, that is so much better. For some reason, it will not allow me to invite Miss Addie. I don't know why. That's weird. All right. So I am personally excited about tonight because we get to sit at you guys' feet. We get to sit at the feet of our elders. Every time I say that, Sharon's it's so funny to me. But listen, in my community, we believe in sitting at the feet of our elders and being blessed and being taught and being schooled. That's what the Bible tells us to do, right? It tells us to listen to wisdom. And so I have gathered tonight some of the wisest moms that I know that are in my circle, and they agreed to come on and talk to us and school us about motherhood. And so I'm super excited about this conversation tonight. Let's see if Miss Addie is here. Still not letting me. Oh, man. Miss Addie, I think that you're going to have to go out and then come back in so that it will allow me to add you. So I am super excited about joining in on this conversation tonight, and I am going to be listening myself. All right, so let's see. Who do we have here? I want you guys to go ahead and introduce yourselves. I'm going to start with Miss Shannon. So I know Shannon from church, you guys. So Shannon, do you want to introduce yourself and talk to us about your motherhood journey? How did you become a mama?
Well, my name is Shannon. One of the things that I most know God intended for me to be was a wife and a mother. Mm-hmm. You know, when you're younger and you think about your career choices, what you're going to do, you know, you're kind of up in the air about, you know, what you want to do. Those were the two things that I was extremely clear about God intended for me. I was married fairly young. I was 18 when I got married.
18.
18.
Woo. Can we just pause and just reflect on that? 18.
Yes.
Wow.
I have been with my husband since I was 15 years old. Truly a blessing. And we waited about a year before we had our first child. And my journey to motherhood was not easy. Even at a young age, I had a child, a miscarriage, a child, and a miscarriage, and a child. So I cherish every last one of them because
I know you do.
It's not easy for everyone. And so I don't take them for granted at all, and actually had a lot of sacrifices that my husband and I chose to do to raise them, which was for me to stay at home with them until they were in school.
I want to get back to that. You mentioned that word sacrifices, and that's something that I wrote that down because I want to get back to that because that's something that I hear often from the moms that I work with in my practice. And so I want to talk about that. Yay! There's Miss Annie. Okay, so that's Miss Shannon. Shannon, you've been a wife since 18. I am still stuck on that. I never knew it was 18. Wow.
Yes.
Okay. All right. And then we have Miss Sharon. So we got Sharon and Shannon, yes. And I love Sharon. Sharon, I've known you for, I want to say 4 years.
Yes.
I met you at a conference and we just became friends, social media friends, and now we are real life friends. And I love you. I really do love you. So how did you become a mom? Introduce yourself. How did you become a mom?
My name is Sharon Fletcher, Sharon Maynard Fletcher, and I became a wife at 27. It was young, but not quite as young as 18, but it was young. And a lot like Shannon, my journey to motherhood was not easy. It was 4 years before we had our first child.
Wow.
I didn't experience, the pain of miscarriage, but I did experience the pain of PCOS. And I just wasn't able to conceive right away. And then, my oldest son came, and after that, it seemed like I couldn't stop having babies. So now I have 3 beautiful children. Their ages 15, 12, and 10. And like Shannon said, I believe that motherhood is a calling. I think that, obviously it's your first, thank you, Crystal. It's your first ministry. It really is. It is a ministry. And there is a lot of sacrifice that goes along with motherhood. But like Shannon said, there are sacrifices that we chose to make because I wanted to be with my children. I don't tell, people a lot, but I have a doctorate of pharmacy degree. I'm a pharmacist by trade, and I chose to work part-time so that I could spend time with my children.
Wow, that's amazing. I don't know if you know this, but I sacrificed some of my own schedule so that I can be there and raise my daughter and my son. He's in school, but we have her home, and so it's one of the joys of my life. Though it's something that I've always wanted. So it's it's a sacrifice, but it's amazing as well. It's an amazing experience. So we'll get to that sacrifice part. So Miss Addie, how are you?
I'm good.
I have never met Miss Addie in person, you guys, but I can just sense the wisdom that oozes out of her. So I said, she has got to join us tonight. And I'm so glad that you said yes. So thank you so much. Can you just share with us a little bit about yourself and how you became a mom?
So I am a single mother. But my husband and I got married in about 1992 after dating for about 10 years.
Wow.
I had a miscarriage in 98. And at that point, I thought, I'm not having any children. Now, I really, in my heart of hearts, when everybody asked me, did I want children? I tell them no. I was a school teacher. I was around children all the time. I didn't want any. But then when I had my miscarriage, I was crushed. And God promised me that he would restore and that it wasn't over. And so I ended up the following year, 1 year later, being pregnant with my oldest. And decided, okay, 1 is good. I'm happy. It was easygoing. I'm not going to test the waters again. And I was on my way to schedule my appointment to get my tubes tied, and my doctor goes, "You're pregnant." Child number 2.
Wow.
So I have 2 wonderful, amazing boys. They lost their father at the age of 3 and 6. And it has been an amazing journey because they are now 18 and 21.
So I have the oldest children.
You have the oldest children. You do. You absolutely do. So we're going to pull on that wisdom right there as well. So all of you guys have talked a little bit about the sacrifices that comes with motherhood. And like I said earlier, that's something that I hear almost every day. So I work with moms that have experienced some type of trauma, some type of dysfunction, and they are working to transition from what they have experienced and be more healthy now. And a lot of them struggle because they're asking themselves, well, how do I do this all? So based on what you guys have talked about in regards to the sacrifice of mommyhood, what would you share with them in regards to how do I manage being a mom who has experienced trauma, who has experienced dysfunctional upbringings, and how do I be healthy as a mom for the kids that I have now in my life?
I think, if you don't mind, I can start with that.
Sure.
Because I experienced a lot of trauma myself growing up. And one thing I can say is some trauma you are aware of and some you are not.
Mm-hmm.
And we do parent out of our pain, and we have to be very careful that we are healed ourselves. So
Amen.
for me, I was molested as a child.
Wow.
So I was very protective, which is one of the reasons I chose to sacrifice, to stay home with my children, because I didn't want them in daycare. I didn't want anyone responsible for my children when they could not tell me that someone mishandled them. And so we made that decision. But at the same time, we had to have a healthy balance. I didn't want to be overbearing. And I think in hindsight, I probably could have been a little looser. However, that's the one thing I can say now is that when you have given them all that you have, that's all you can give, and you have to be okay with that. So I salute single parents because I do not understand how you do it. Single moms or dads are superheroes to me, because one thing about raising children is they take you to the edge of who you are. Like, if you don't know Jesus, you will look for him at some moments.
Absolutely.
And when we can have the opportunity to pass them to someone when we're at our limit, and you're single and you don't have someone to pass it to, you have to be able to be okay with giving your best. And if you're giving your best, it may not look like someone else's, but you've given them everything that you have to give. But it is important for us to be healed so we don't parent out of that pain and that trauma.
Yeah, I love what you said. What I heard you, one of the things that I heard you say is that being okay with giving them what you have, the best of you, and recognizing that that is good enough. And so often I find that moms tend to judge themselves and think that they are not enough. Can you talk to that part of that? Like, there are a lot of moms that are listening that think that their best is not enough, or am I giving enough? How do I know if I'm giving my best? What would you say about that?
Is that for anyone else, or is that for me?
Shannon, if you don't mind, Shannon.
I think that when your children are growing up and they're healthy, there's always a level of dysfunction in anything that we do. So there is absolutely no perfection. But when you know in your heart that you've given them everything that you have, you just have to have a peace. And you have to, honestly, for us, it was always the two of us plus Holy Spirit helping us. Because there are times when you have to call on help. You can't do it. We were tired with the two of us. And so when you know that you have given everything and you communicate that to your partner, because communication is key. I have apologized to my children when I have been out of pocket. Like, you know, when you do something that isn't correct, you're short with them. Even when they were younger, I didn't have a problem coming back and saying, you know what, Mommy had a hard day. I should not have raised my voice at you. We're still in that place of authority, but we have to respect them as well, and be able to come back. And you're teaching them the humility of being able to come back and apologize. And I used to tell them all the time, you know, this is my first time being a mom too, so I'm learning with you. There is no rule book that you follow. So I think having that humility and being able to say, I apologize, please forgive me, is key. And it teaches them how to get along in their relationships, and when they become parents, being okay with that.
That's so good. That's so good. Kids don't want perfect parents. Because perfection doesn't exist, right?
Exactly.
And so what kids and people in general need is when you mess up, if you mess up, acknowledge it.
Exactly.
That's what's important to kids and to everyone, right? So thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
Shannon, Sharon, and Miss Addie, anything about moms that are transitioning from unhealthy childhood upbringings and now they're moms and now they're trying to just be healthy with their own kids? What tips would you have for them?
Miss Addie, you want to go first?
Sure. I agree that you first have to heal. As messed up as I was growing up, one of the things I thought I was lacking was a father figure. And so raising two young boys, it was important that they got a relationship with their dad. And so that was one of the major things for me. I was like, you need to know who your dad is. You need to, listen to him. You need to spend time with them. I didn't want him to be, a distant dad. I wanted him to know them and be able to take care of them. And so one of the things I ended up doing was going off to grad school, and it was making sure that they spent time. You can't guide your children until you heal. And every time I hit a hurdle and I saw that I was weak, it was because there was a wound inside.
Wow.
So my thing was, okay, God, help me to heal the wound. Help me bring it to you so that I don't mess up my children. I already screwed up. I know that there's some issues in me. Help me not to mess up my children. So in order for me to do that, I had to heal. I had to let go of bitterness. I had to let go of hatred and what I thought I knew. And I had to ask for forgiveness for a lot of things. And that allowed me to be able to raise my children. But also understanding that I didn't do it alone. I had a community.
Yeah.
A community to raise children. They had godparents who God had placed in their lives that stepped up. They had uncles and aunties and cousins. My mother was a huge impact in helping me raise my children. But understand that as a parent, you can't do it by yourself.
Yeah.
You've got to rely on people that you trust to help you. When they say, "Hey, I want to help," let them help you. That's your moment to take a breather. That's your moment to take time to do self-examination. If you don't take a weekend vacation once a year, you need that as and I'm guilty of going many, many years. I took one this year for the first time in years, but when they were real, real young, that was the first thing I did. I took the weekend vacation, and it was my mental health to help me be able to keep raising them, to help me dump out all that stuff that was inside. So you have to heal as a parent first.
Yeah.
Because otherwise your children receive everything.
Yeah. Miss Addie, I have a follow-up question about that. You talked a lot about healing so that you can be, hi, Otesia, my coach is on, you guys. My coach and my sister in the Lord. You talk a lot about healing as a mom. What does healing look like in motherhood?
So for me, it was, for instance, when I had the miscarriage, I was very hurt. I was very devastated. And at that point, my mind was, I didn't want any children.
Wow. But
that was not in God's plan. And that was not what my husband wanted. My husband, I learned later, wanted 6 children after I had the first. So, for me, that was like, you want how many? Yeah, if I'd have known that, we probably wouldn't walk down the aisle. That's just how we're But it required me to take a Selah and allow God to heal that hurt, that pain, that wound. It wasn't something I could do on my own. It was something that God had to do in me. But it required me to go lay before him and say, God, here is how I feel.
Yeah.
And be really honest. I'm hurt. I'm devastated. I told you this was something I couldn't go through. And what he reminded me was, you can go through because of me. And I will carry you through. And you're going to be okay. Mm-hmm. It was a lot of conversations with God, but it really was those healing moments. After I lost my husband, I can recall having this major meltdown. And I was angry and going, God, why? God, why? You know, I cannot raise two boys on my own.
Wow.
And I remember God saying to me, in one of our conversations, my husband would say, you know, you love me so much. If you left me, you just lay out and die. And I said, you know, no, I won't. I love you that much that I would continue to live. And that night I passed and I was sobbing in tears. God said, mourn, but now get up and live. You said you would live and not die. Now get up and live. And every time I get to those points where I'm feeling bitter, where I'm feeling angry, I take it to the throne. Let God do the healing on the inside, because that's where the pain really is. And if I don't, my children get it. The people I work, it's not just my children, but it's the people you work with, it's the people that you see, because that bitterness seeps from the out, from the inside to the out. And so in order to keep that from happening, you've got to allow God to heal you. And that requires spending.
I heard you say so many good things in there. I heard you say that there's an awareness that comes along with healing. So one of the first steps I heard you talk about was awareness. It's being aware of what's happening on the inside of you, how it's affecting those that are in your home. And then I heard you talk about having a willingness to just be healed. You know, sometimes we recognize that we are hurting. And sometimes because it hurts so bad, we try to hide it, right? But what I hear you saying is that you have to be willing to be healed. You have to want to let it go. And in your process of healing, you got to the place where you wanted to let it go. And because of that, you became healed. And healing is not a one-time thing. Healing is something that is, look, it's a circle, right? One day you on step A, and then the next day you on step Z, and then you go back to step A, right?
Yeah, when you think you're healed, then you find out, oh, there's another level of this.
Another level. It's another level. There are levels to healing. And so I thank you for talking about that. So number one, healing is a process, and it doesn't happen overnight. So you have to be patient with yourself even, huh? Yeah, that's so good. That's so good. Miss Sharon, talk to that mom who comes from that dysfunctional upbringing, and she wants to be healthy and she wants to thrive in her home. What did you say to her?
You know, these women of God said it all. They really did. It's, you know, I often say, you know, when I'm ministering to others, that if you aren't healed, you'll end up bleeding on people. And that's the truth with motherhood. You have to heal from past traumas. And the biggest thing with that is being open and honest with yourself and being open and honest with God. You know, saying, you know what, I'm hurting from this. God, I need you to help me with this. One thing that when I got married, in my church, they had a bridal shower, and everybody, all the women gave me advice. And the best piece of advice that I got was to have a real relationship with Jesus, because that's what it takes. You have to always sit at the feet of Jesus and just talk to him and be open and honest with him and let him come in and heal. You said something, I can't remember. I mean, y'all said so much good stuff. And I really can't, you know, add to any of that. But one thing about pain, sometimes we hold on to it. It's like a mechanism of defense, kind of. We try to hold on to it thinking that if we remember it, it'll stop us from hurting again. It'll stop us from hurting someone from hurting us that way or hurting our children that way. But what we're really doing is we're continuing to injure ourselves and in turn injure our children. So I had to trust God with my pain. And trust God with the fact that I know you have my best interest at heart and you want me to be healed. And so I'm going to let it go, because that is key. And then I also had to realize that just like I'm an individual, my children are individuals.
So good.
They're not me.
They're not
and their path is not mine. And just because it happened to me doesn't mean that it's going to happen to them. And it doesn't mean that it has to happen to them. And so I have to stop looking at them through the lens of what happened to me and start looking at them through the lens of these are God's children that I'm blessed enough to be a steward of parenting, of motherhood.
Yeah, that's so good. I love that. One of the things that I heard you mention is something that I hear often from my new moms. And that is, they have this baby, you bring the baby home, there's no handbook on parenting, right? And so you're like, do I feed it? Do I change? Like, what am I doing? What are we doing here? And one of the things I heard you say is that you in your journey, you relied a lot on God, on hearing from God. Now, a lot of people that follow this page are not believers. So talk to us about what does relying on someone else or like hearing God, like what does that mean? What does that mean? And what does it look like to hear from God? What does that mean?
Me or anybody else?
Anyone.
Okay. For me, hearing from God, basically, God, the Spirit of God is His Word. So the key to knowing God and knowing how He responds, knowing how He relates to us, is knowing His Word.
Yeah.
And just sitting and just asking Him, Lord, I don't understand this. Could you help me to understand? Could you reveal to me what this means? And could you not only reveal to me what this means, but how does this relate to me? How can I use your word that you breathed life in, that you left for us? How can I use your word to help me in my situation?
Yeah.
And in those conversations and in reading His word, you learn His character. You learn how He responds. You learn how He thinks, how He acts, how he views us. And so in those conversations with God and in learning His word, that's when you learn how He responds to you. And He speaks to us in different ways. There was one time where and I still don't, I have conversation with Him often, but some people have heard audible voice. I can't say that has happened. It's been more of an unction. But there was one time where He would only speak to me through dreams. There was one time where, I could be feeling something, going through some things, and I would open the Word of God and there would be the answer.
Wow.
There would be times where I would be in a conversation with a sister in the Lord and they would be speaking directly to what I'm going through and they had no clue. So God speaks to us in different ways. We just have to be open to the fact that He wants to speak to us. Yeah. He wants to commune with us and he loves us. I think sometimes we miss it because we don't grasp hold of that.
Yeah, that's so good. Anyone else want to add? While you guys are talking, I want to just add this part, and this is something that I talked a lot to my clients about. Is that some of my clients don't go to church. They're not from that world, and I think that it's important that they understand also that we all have instincts, right? Like we have these instincts that kind of guide us and that teach us how to live our lives, right? Like when you walk down a dark alley or you're walking down a street and you want to go down that dark alley and something says, don't go that way. Don't go that way. Go this way. That's your instinct. That's your gut, right? And a lot of people will say that that's God leading you. That's how you hear. If you learn how to trust that instinct that you have, that instinct won't ever lead you astray. It won't ever lead you. Trust. It won't ever lead you astray. So you got to learn to trust it. So go ahead, Shannon.
That you're going exactly where I was about to go. Sometimes trust is an issue, and especially if you, as a new mom, have had abandonment from a father. Or any family member, it's hard to trust. And I know for us, when we got married, we moved to an entirely different state. And our last child we had here in North Carolina. So now you're in a new environment that you don't know people. So it's hard to trust. And plus, you're already looking at the trauma that you've dealt with growing up. So there is an issue of not trusting. And what you have to do, and the Bible says to seek godly counsel, that's where you have to reach and trust, even if you don't know where to go. But when you pull on God, He will place people, and it doesn't have to be all spooky and mysterious. And for me, I didn't grow up in the church, so I learned and I met God as an adult, and that gave me such an appreciation to hold on to Him. Like, my husband grew up in the church. That's one of the things that attracted me to him. Mm-hmm. But when you're talking about someone who may not have that background, when you call out, it could be as simple as calling out, Lord, please send me somebody to help me, to show me the way. And even being married and having my children, I remember, days started running into each other, being home with them. So we say it's a sacrifice, and it sounds real glorious and beautiful, and, the white picket fence, and it isn't. I mean, there were days when I was just like, can I please have an adult conversation? Like, my husband would come home, and I'm like, please, can we go somewhere? I've been in the house with the kids. I've had peanut butter and jelly for lunch, and he's like, oh, I went to lunch with my coworkers and this, and I'm like stuck in the house. Like, there's more to my life than cooking, cleaning, laundry, and making sure everyone is where they want to. And that's real. That is just
so real. That is so real. Listen. Yeah.
You've got to be able to do that. So I remember saying, God, if you just help me. I mean, our car had been repossessed. I said, God, if you get this car back for me, it will be at someone's church every Sunday, I promise you. And I'm telling you, I have done my very best to live up to that. But I said that to say, it was at church that they brought a therapist, a counselor to the church. And let me tell you, years of trauma that I had experienced that I didn't even realize I was parenting with all of these hurts, because I too had father issues. And I said, you know what? You recognize that things aren't where you want them to be. And just talking with her, she said to me something that changed the course of my life. And she said, just because he didn't give you what you wanted didn't mean he didn't give you everything he had.
Come on now.
And it was like a light bulb went off. And I know that God sent this woman to me on that day. And so as a mother, we've got to be able to trust the people God sends to us, to be able to hear. Because some people are the only Bible that they may ever read. I mean, if I say that I'm a Christian and I'm, I may be the only thing that they ever read, but we've got to be able to develop that. And listen, I'm not by any means degrading the Word of God, because that's how I live. But until you get to that point, we've got to be able to know that it's okay to reach out for our mental health and for therapy and for counseling and for all of these areas. And so we've just got to be our sisters' keepers and be able to know that even in our neighborhoods, there are people, there are people like that work for me on my team that had to go to work during the pandemic. You can bring your babies over here. Huh?
Wow.
What? I can't. Yes, if you have to go in, I'm okay with that. And we just have to be able to be there for one another and let them know that you're doing the best that you can as a mom, but I'm here to help you, and be able to be there for each other.
That's so good. Wow, you said a mouthful. You said a lot of good things. That was so good. That was so good. One of the things that you touched on that I didn't think about asking in terms of a question, but since it's here, let's talk about it. You said that you had daddy issues, and a lot of my clients have daddy issues. A lot of them didn't have their dads, or their dad's relationship with them is strained. And so, it affects them. Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
So my dad, it was difficult for me. It was difficult for me in my marriage in the beginning, even in learning to trust God. Like I couldn't trust my father that I could see. Now you're asking me to trust somebody that I can't see, and you're telling me that this is my holy father, and it really is a process. And that's just a real statement. My parents were married. They were divorced when I was 7.5. My father stepped out of the marriage, had other children. It was hard for me to trust even my husband.
Wow.
You know, when I first met him, and I kind of laughed when Miss Annie was talking about that. When I was 15 and I met him, I said, I'm not getting married and I'm not having any kids. So
sorry.
I don't know if this is what you want to do. You know what I mean? But that was my reality because of the pain. But God showed me, even then at 15, who gets married at 18? You know what I mean? And has their first child at 20. It's like the things that I thought I had planned for me. And they were really basically out of the hurt and the pain of my father not being there.
Wow.
And I didn't want to put that pain on another child. So I was like, I'm not having any children. I'm not getting married. I'm not doing that. But there's so much that goes into that, because my parents were married for 10 years. And for the first 10 years of my marriage, literally, my husband never gave me a reason to not trust him. But when it came to finances, it was things like I stayed home. So when it was time for me to get a car, it's like we're getting ready to sign the papers, and I know the salesperson probably thought I was nuts, but I was like, okay, so if we get a divorce, is this my car or is this your car? And he's like, this is your car. But if we get a divorce, are you going to give me this car? And he said, yes. Now, technically, it was in his name because I wasn't working, but because he said yes, I was like, okay, go ahead and sign the paper. But that's how deep trauma.
Yeah.
That's how deep. And when we passed 10 years, it was like something settled in me. Wow. And so those are the places that need to be healed. Those are the places that need to be, because I said, if we get divorced, are you going to be here for the kids? Like, I asked all the latest questions.
Asking, listen, you got to ask. You got to ask.
I was like, even if we don't work out, are you still going to be there for the kids? This was before we ever got married. Like, every hurt that I felt, I asked him all of those questions, like prerequisite, but I had to realize that what I was feeling was in me and not to take it out or push him away. And so I had work to do.
Yeah, that's so good. That's so good. Anyone else want to share in regards to that whole daddy piece?
For me, as I said before, I know I had daddy issues. One, because my father was an alcoholic, so he was in and out. And so the one thing I wanted was his time and his, which left me really a lot of wounds that I can recall spilling out on my husband when I first met him. And I remember him looking at me one day and he goes, I'm not like your father. Just like cut straight through me. And, but God used that as a healing moment, because what he then began to do was to say, hey, he's a good guy. You don't have to stay on guard looking for reasons why he's going to walk out, why he's going to leave, why he's not going to be there to support you, why he's not going to be there to love you. He is going to be there regardless. But he gave me some other examples along the way. He gave me an awesome father-in-law who he didn't call me daughter-in-law. He called me his daughter. Gave me a set of godparents when I moved here that even to today, I call them mom and dad. That for me, I've got a second set of parents that have whole relationships that I can now look up and know what it means to have a loving father. Yeah. One of the things I'm going to tell people is, and I tell everybody is that you got to love yourself. If you don't love yourself, you can't love anybody else. And so loving yourself is the key to getting past some of those daddy issues. Okay, yeah. I gotta love me for me, regardless of what my dad did or didn't do or what I wanted him to do, but also forgive him. Mm-hmm. I had to learn to forgive my father for not living up to the image I wanted him to be. Yeah. It wasn't that he had the issue, I had the issue. Mm-hmm. And I had to, even after his death, I remember sitting in my car one day and just sobbing in tears and saying, God, I'm so sorry. Because God said, mm-hmm. yeah, he had issues. No, he wasn't there, but he loved me still the same. Mm-hmm. You're going to need to forgive. And he goes, if you forgive, you're going to have issues. And I had to just do that, you know. And for people who don't have that relationship with Christ, I encourage you, get some scriptures on love and begin to learn what it means to love yourself the way God loves you. And as you understand that, it helps you to be able to love your children, to love God, to love others in your life the way God intends us to love, which is unconditionally. We're able to see them through the eyes of Christ and not see all their little issues and all their little mistakes and behaviors. Yeah, even with my children, because I would say, God, you gave them to me.
That's so funny.
That Matthew is living up to his name.
That's funny. That's so funny. I love that. Well, let's talk a little bit about, we talked about when mom has daddy issues. What about for the moms whose parenting partner, the father, is not involved and the child is wanting dad to be there and missing out on that father figure? Especially you, Addie, because you said that your kids grew up without their father. Can you speak to that mom who doesn't have that father in their child's life?
One of the things is you can't bash. Mm-hmm. If that dad's not there, the worst thing you can do is bash that dad. Or if that mom's not there, the worst thing you do is bash that mom. You can't do the bashing piece. And so that was really important, that no matter what I felt about my father, my boys never heard anything negative.
It's hard. It's hard for moms. It's hard.
It is.
Yeah.
But understand, what we feel gets portrayed, and they're going to treat them accordingly. Mm-hmm. And so because they haven't learned how to separate, they love innocently. And so as the adult, it becomes our responsibility not to shape and form their minds in a negative way.
That's so good.
So for me, when it came to, I can remember it was probably less than a week. And one of mine, after my husband passed, and they go, so who's going to be our new dad? And I think I hit the floor. And I was like, there is not going to be anyone. But what I did find was support. God had given me godparents for my children. He handpicked them. That's the best way I can tell y'all that. That when I got pregnant with Isaiah, I was teaching, and I had a parent that looked at me and said, so have you found a babysitter? And I went, no. And y'all, I'm going to be honest, I never looked after that point. Mm-hmm. After he was born, I called her. I said, come on, his baby's here. Get her in the house. I put Isaiah in her hands. And I said, so have you thought about babysitting? And from that connection, God gave me a whole family. He didn't just give me one person. He gave me a whole family that when their dad passed, came in with support, where the boys had issues and they felt like, hey, I don't want to make my mom sad. And they wouldn't ask me questions. They'd go sit at the dinner table and they would ask all kinds of questions. And then they'll bring it back to me and let me know, so that we know how to help them to mature past the grief and the hurt and the pain. He gave me church men and women who were support to them. But what I also learned was my kids understood you got to make your yay be yay and your nay be nay.
Okay.
If what you said was true, you were going to do, you needed to do it. Because later on, if you didn't, what they end up saying was, oh, that person lied to me. They're not truthful. And so, you have to teach kids. The kids are going to do what you teach them. And so I encourage you. I know how hard it can be. I know there are times, there are so many bad situations. Even with my mom, one of the things she made me do was respect my father. Despite what I felt, despite how I felt, if even he could have been laid out drunk and I wanted to go somewhere, she'd say, go ask your dad. If you don't, then go. And there were times I went and sat in my room, mad, huffing and puffing, because I didn't want to go ask. But she made me. She was like, if you want to do this, you're going to be respectful and you're going to go ask. And she taught me that. And I appreciate that, because now I'm able to look past and say, hey, despite what he's done, despite how I feel, I've got to teach them to honor. Honor's not, we got to teach kids how to honor those adults. Teach them how to honor their father. Again, the issue is not between the child and the dad. The issue is between me and the dad. So we've got to make sure that we don't pour out our hurt, our pain, our bitterness, our frustration on our children that we're feeling to that other adult.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. That was amazing. That was amazing. Thank you so much. And I just looked at the time. We got 15 minutes. Time went by so fast. I could talk to you ladies all week long. But I have one more question before we wrap up. And if you have any questions, if you're watching, we got a party tonight, you guys. We got some good people on. If you have any questions, drop those in the comments so that we can ask our elders, since we are sitting at the feet of elders tonight. I want to talk to you guys. I want you guys to talk to us about how did you make your house a home? This is the holiday season. Single moms and co-parenting moms, all moms are making their houses homes and bringing in the holiday season. How did you do that for your family? I really want to hear this. Like, how did you make your house a home for your family? How did you kind of cultivate that spirit of togetherness in your home? Anyone can just jump in.
So for us, this is just all the time. We always have like family meetings. Mm-hmm. Whenever there is a decision to be made, any disagreement, any tension, anything, we sit down and we communicate with each other and we talk about, or any changes that are going to come. We talk about all of those things. The one thing that I love, one of the things I love about my children, and I tell them I love them as people, not just as my children.
That's
like,
so good.
They're just good people. Like, if I met you on the street, I would like you as a person.
Yeah.
But they cheer for each other. They root for each other. I have a sister with my parents, and my dad went on. He had other children as well. But, 2 girls, and then my husband had 2 boys. Like, the one thing I didn't want sibling rivalry. I didn't want any of those things in our home. And one of the things that we do is make a safe environment for them to talk about anything. Yeah. And finding balance in everything that we do, because my husband always said the one drug that they could be on was being drugged to church. Because he said every time the doors were open, they were there. But in that, we gave them balance. We, just didn't want to make them so spiritual that they were no earthly good, because at the end of the day, they have to be able to get along in the earth and to be an agent of change. You can't, just be way out there. And so we always been able to be loving with them and be able to have just a place, even for holidays. Like, when we think about Thanksgiving, one of the things we do is we literally sit down and we talk about what we're thankful for. As cheesy as it may sound, we'd hold hands, and before prayer, what are you thankful for? Because they need to understand that even as a family, we're here for each other. We need to be thankful that God has provided all of these things for us. And we actually started one of the wonderful traditions. We started with birthdays. And it was through my daughter in love. she has sisters, and I've inherited many daughters. And
Awesome.
even for birthdays, we talk about what was your favorite memory with the birthday person that year. And let me tell you, there is never a dry eye when we think about, you know what, I really was proud of you when this happened, or I was really proud of you when that happened. And it just gives us a time to share and appreciate one another, so that when they're out in the world, they always know that there is family, there is a tribe. We are a tribe. There's a safety net.
That's so good.
We are.
That's so good. Miss Addie, Miss Sharon.
You can go ahead, Miss Addie.
I would say for us is teamwork. Especially after my husband passed, it was important because I was working mother. I was a teacher, so not working wasn't an option for me. And so teamwork was important. So if my boys volunteered to do something, I let them do it. So at 3, the youngest was helping me with the laundry, which made the older one a little jealous because it wasn't something he was doing. So he was like, I want to help too. Sure, go right ahead. We are a team here. So teamwork is one of the things that we have really worked hard on, and haven't been able to give them everything they wanted, but giving them the things that they needed. And in doing that, they became appreciative of just very simple and basic things. They were very sensitive to where I was and the things I was going through. They lived through the trauma of every day wondering if mama's going to be home, if mama's going to make it back home. Is mama, once we got through all of those things, making sure that they understood that they were loved and that, hey, mom's going to give you everything she got, but the first thing she's going to give you is love. And I love you, through any and everything. No matter what you do, no matter what you say, I will love you. And I will correct you out of love. Because I think that sometimes the things that kids have done, people laugh and, oh, ha, ha, it's cute. I just love them through it. I was like, I love you. We're going to try hard. We're going to do better. And I would start every day. You're going to go off to school. You're going to do well. You're going to try hard. You're going to behave. And we'd make that our statement. How's your day going to go? But know that I love you. And even in the holidays, it wasn't about buying a whole lot of gifts. It was more about spending time together. Christmas, I actually got sick. They cooked.
Wow.
Which was, I laid on the sofa. I gave them instruction, and they cooked food that lasted us a whole entire week. And so teamwork, I would say, was the biggest thing that we did, especially during the holidays, just hanging out together.
I love that. Let me find out my little 1-year-old gonna start cooking this year. Have her and the 10-year-old cooking. I really do love that idea. Miss Sharon.
So things that, we do in the holidays, I think it's important for families to create traditions.
Yeah.
And, there are several traditions that we have that my children every year, without question, they know we're going to go to see the lights at James Island and pick out our family ornament. And every year we have an ornament from when Aaron was a baby up until now, and we put those on our tree every year. We have certain cookies that we bake together every year. They know Auntie is going to bake chocolate chip cookies, and they rag me because hers are better than mine. So we have certain things that we do as a family, but and that's during the holidays, and I think that's very important that they have that. It's that consistency, and they have those memories that they can draw on that'll make them smile, in hard times, or even when mom and dad aren't there. They'll always remember every year we did this as a family, and that kind of gives them comfort. But one thing that I have tried as a mom to do to make my house a home is to make sure that mom is your safe place. So basically, when they tell me stuff, although I may be screaming on the inside, like, oh my gosh, what in the world? I try to remain calm and nod and look at them in the eye and let them know that I'm listening to them. And when you do that, they'll come and talk to you. And even the littlest things, you know, if you stop what you're doing and you look at them and give them eye contact, the littlest things, when it comes to the big things, they'll tell you. Absolutely. You won't have to pull and prod and you know, and do things like that. And that's another way of just making them feel safe and just knowing that with mom, you have a safe place. And one thing, you know, a lot of times we talk about our childhood trauma and how we parent from that. But, you know, sometimes trauma in unfavorable situations, it helps to shape you into who you are. And it's a good thing. You know, sometimes it's a good thing. One thing that when I was growing up, my mom's family was in Detroit. My dad's family was here in Charleston. We grew up in Little Bamberg, South Carolina. I had 3 siblings. One of my siblings is going on to be with the Lord. But one thing that my dad instilled in us is you look out for your brother and you look out for your sister. Y'all have each other's back. Because at the end of the day, y'all are all you got. Mm-hmm. And we still hold on to that to this day. And that's something that I instill in my children when they, you know, start fussing and they start fighting. You know, I let them know, look, you only got, you got 2 brothers. That's it. You know, you got 1 sister. That's all you got. You know, mom and dad may not be around, but when you look around, your sibling is going to be who you have to depend on. Okay. And so, you know, those are just things that I try to instill and try to do to make sure that our house is a home.
That's so good. And then Cynthia, I have Cynthia, one of my therapist friends, joined in, and she said traditions are definitely leaving a legacy to our children. I agree. Thank you guys so much. These are the elders of our community. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. So many gems, absolutely. So many gems that you guys shared with us. And I know that I will be going back and listening to the replay because sometimes you have to listen to it a couple of times before it really takes. So I'm going to go back and I'm going to listen to this replay for sure. If you don't mind, really quickly, if you want to share where we can find you on social media. I know a couple of our moms have businesses. So share where we can find you. Listen, let me tell you something, Sharon. I am currently burning one of your candles. I love your candles. Please tell us where we can find you.
So you can find me at Refreshing Moments with Sharon on Instagram. You actually can shop straight from Instagram if you like to buy a candle. I have a line of coconut wax candles and wax melts, and I also have room sprays. And
they're all amazing. They are all amazing. You. All amazing.
I'm writing it down now. Oh my God.
All amazing. Miss Addie, where can we find you?
Actually, you can find me on Facebook. I do have an Instagram page, but you can. I also have a faith and family and financial page. You are welcome to join as we're dropping nuggets on, you know, faith, family, and finances.
Thank you so much. And what's the tag for your Facebook? Faith, is it? Mm-hmm. Okay, so faith, family, and finances.
Yes.
Awesome. Now, Shannon, Elder Shannon, do you have a business that you want to share?
I saw Minister Otis on here, so I'm not. She.
So get her started now.
I'm trying.
Don't get her started.
No, but I do not. But I am working on a book.
Oh, okay now.
Yes.
I love that.
So I will definitely share it with you. One of the last things I want to say is make sure you document those recipes too, so they can get carried on. That's one of the things we did. We did a Google Doc thing where we just took one here. Because you know how we say, put a dash of this, put a little bit of this, just keep shaking till the ancestors tell you stop. No, we need to literally document these traditional recipes so that our children know how to make the macaroni and cheese and the dressing and or whatever your family's traditions are. So I wanted to throw that in as well.
That's so good. So good. So good and so important. So, so thank you guys for joining us tonight.
Thank you.
Come back next week. Next week, we have a panel of moms just talking about how do they do it their way for the holidays. We started talking today about family traditions. We'll talk more in depth about traditions next week. And then the following week, we're going to talk about holiday grief. How do you survive holiday grief? There is a reason that the holiday season is one of the number one times that people die by suicide. There's a reason for that. So we will be talking about all of that on the following Tuesday. I think it's Tuesday the 23rd. And then next week, I actually have a huge announcement. So come back. If you love this conversation, if you love sitting at the feet of your elders and listening to wisdom, you are going to be so happy about the announcement that I have next week. It is for you. So I want you to come back next week for that announcement. So thank you so much for joining us, ladies. I will see you all next time. Bye-bye.
Bye. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
Bye.